This has been an interesting month for me, and in the spirit of resurrections, I really have been inspired to pursue a dream of mine that started and I have been inching towards for a long time. On a side note, City of Heroes, a game I had loved as a teenager, has returned to life and I feel like a kid again. I plan on doing video updates on the status of the game and why it is just so dang special. That leads me to my story, or at least a part of it. The Series of DarkCry, or SODC, is a sci-fi action space opera set in the not too far future. It takes a look at the origin of the universe with a what-if spin of multiple variously cultured alien races having colonized much of the extended universe. Humanity exists within this universe. However, humanity is very much infant and ignorant to the vast communities growing far out of view as well as hidden within their midst. Any likenesses or similarities to actual or living people is purely coincidence, and all story content is original and created by me. The tales I have begun writing involve family, obsession, betrayal, and love, starting with a warrior going into retirement. This warrior had recently been rescued after being missing and considered potentially dead during a fierce battle nearly 7 months ago. After a debrief, she was honorably promoted, but her superiors request her technical retirement as she is to be sent to the planet Earth to become its first praetor. Obviously, the main characters are not human, and the premise is incredibly science fiction, but the story grows in many ways, and that is why I would like to begin sharing it with all of you. I have written 11 chapters that I would like to record of me reading aloud as an audiobook of sorts, and while I am doing this for posterity's sake, I would also love feedback and criticism. With that being said, this is Jacob Harris, further to be known as JH, and this is the Series of DarkCry, Chronicles of the Darkest Seraph. Chapter 1, New Genesis, the year 20XX. The nightlife of New Genesis had never been more alive. The teeming streets filled with the various vendors, merchants, and tellers, all with their differing products and merchandise, scurried like ants among neon lights. Packed to uncomfortable levels, the streets buzzed with the even more astonishingly different species of humanoid from all over the vast sector. Fresh fish from all over the planet to freshly rotting refuse. Everything can be found under the alien shimmering of Haven's 3 moons. From makeshift tent to grandiose holographic advertisement, the market district of New Genesis was truly a wondrous sight. Overhead, the 3rd moon of Haven had just peaked behind the crystalline 2nd, causing the shadows of the tall skyscrapers of New Genesis to dance chaotically, giving them a certain lifelike nature of their own above the orderly nightlife below. The lime and purple hue of the 2nd moon mingled with the crystalline 3rd, making the night sky light up with a prismatic display of brilliance, an event only known as the aura, or the celestial rise of petals, in the Linnic tongue. In centuries past, the first days of Aura had been a planet-wide holiday, a time of joy when Haven's inhabitants would celebrate the magnetic forces at play with the elements found in the indigenous flora of the planet. The celestial rise of petals had once been as much a part of tradition of the planet Haven as the Zalvian hunt, but tradition was but second nature within the cities of fundamental progress. New Genesis, the newest of this breed of cities, represents the last bastion of hope for an endangered species. New Genesis, founded by the leaders of the some 100,000 surviving human beings. They arrived in desperation, yet thrived under the relief of a hospitable world among understanding, seemingly hospitable alien species. Thus, they named the area of their landing New Genesis. But this is a history lesson for another time. Tonight, I will concentrate on the telling of the events that would alter the course of stability in our universe. Tonight, I will retell the chronicles of the Darkest Seraph. As the 3rd moon of Haven slid behind the 2nd, continuing its usual circuit, the prismatic lights dimmed and the shadows began to still. But amidst the rooftop shadows, one continued its erratic movements. Swiftly, it snaked and slithered, never ceasing when approaching obstacles. As if with consciousness and spirit of its own, it moved with purpose, bounding from rooftop to rooftop in search of something only known by it. As this shadow slid silently along the cold steel and mortar of the city's heights, it began to slow as it came to the building's edge. As the shadow slithered toward the sloping ledge, it began to take shape, slowly coalescing into the form of a roughly solid individual, yet constantly shifting shadow. The form sat against the sloping ledge with what appeared to be its right leg extended, dangling off the edge, but its left foot placed flat against the surface. The figure, engrossed in an ever constantly shifting cloak of shade, allowed the shadow to form a hood over its face, and beneath that hood burned two swirling orbs, like twin suns amidst the blacks of space. The burning orbs gazed, fixated upon the bustling streets below, scanning, searching for prey only known by it. The figure sat, unhindered, unmoved for several hours, its only motion that of the shadow that it seemed to be made of. While below, the masses continued their nightly rouses, unaware that one of them was being hunted. Jerem Gray pushed through the crowded district as if he was of some great importance. The short, chubby, pale-skinned human huffed and wheezed as he hurriedly made his way to the appointment of his life. Ghost was originally developed on a military satellite for covert operations. However, its psychedelic properties, as well as differing effects on different species, made the drug ineffective for military applications. But as always, drugs have a way of finding themselves in the hands of those that would mistreat them. Jerem Gray had a pair of these grubby hands. The pudgy-faced human lucked out one day on a convoy shipping food supplies to New Genesis when he stumbled across an abandoned crate of Ghost. Ever since then, he has had his face cataloged as one of the most wanted of Sanctuary Space. Numbers 70,398,308. In his defense, number 10,078 of the human most wanted list. Jerem was in a rush as he made his way through the crowds, pausing every now and then to notice some interesting merchandise he'd never seen, or to wipe his mouth after eyeing an alien prostitute passing. He had a love-hate relationship with the market district of New Genesis, especially when he was on business. Tonight was just one of those nights, and the current spectacle in the sky wasn't helping, as every now and then some undesirable stopped mid-stride to view the aura solstice. "Keep it moving, you poor excuse for a," Jerem grunted as he collided with the lumbering Ragnoxic. Standing 9 feet tall, armored in solid gold, and cloaked in the crimson attire of the Rhinoxic Guard, the rhino-faced beast before Jerem was a prime example of the fierceness of his race. As the rhino-like biped turned around, Jerem immediately regretted the brashness of his mouth. "Poor excuse for a what, human?" the giant growled, its broken horn mere inches from Jerem's face. As I was saying," Jerem flailed to recover. "No, I wasn't talking to you, sorry," Jerem blurted, pointing to his right ear. "I was on the phone," he said, stammering off as fast as his short little legs could take him. He counted himself lucky as he remembered the horror stories of Rhinoxic and their potential angers. Looking over his shoulder once more, he noticed the Rhinoxic stood there staring at him. Jerem hiccuped in horror, rushing down an alley on his path. The old hollow had been around for 2 decades, almost as long as the city itself. Originally a place where one could drown their sorrows, it had become a cesspool of corruption, lust, and murder, just the place a guy like Jerem would congregate. Jerem cornered into the door, just passing by a beautiful yellow-skinned Linnet he eyed suspiciously. As he walked past her, entering the old hollow, the youthful Linnet blew a kiss toward him. The shadowy figure's eyes burned brightly as they watched the encounter below. Humans usually did not pick fights with Rhinoxic, but it was even less likely for them to get away alive after. The shadow recognized this human, though, knew his face from news broadcasts. Watching intently as Jerem Gray moved through the crowds, the shadow studied his every move and step. As its eyes flared in recognition of a target, the shadow leapt from the building's ledge into the night sky, bounding from skyscraper to skyscraper, and keeping Jerem directly beneath its flight. And when Jerem ducked off into the old hollow, the shadow fell into the shady alley beside it. What emerged from the alley, however, was not a shadow, but a young, shadowy, dark-skinned humanoid male, clad in black pants, a black leather-like jacket, and an all-white t-shirt. His features were handsomely rugged, belying a life of adventure as well as a cunning intellect. His hair was twisted, coming to shoulder length with white streaking around the ends. His clothing hung loosely and seemed to flow of its own accord. He was every bit the image of a normal, African-descended human, save his pupils glimmered gold. As the young man walked from the alleyway, he placed a pair of thin reflective glasses upon his eyes and proceeded into the old hollow, after his intended prey. As soon as he entered, the young man was assailed by blaring music, flashing lights, and the cheers that make up a classic human club, for that is exactly what the old hollow was. As the young man walked through the entrance, two streams of red light scanned him from foot to head simultaneously from the doorway. "Welcome, Xavier Blurtz," the doorway announced, his last name being muddled with static. Xavier had heard similar reactions before over the last several months, but it always seemed to bring a smirk to his lips. Passing the ID reader, Xavier began searching the club for Jerem Gray. The club was filled with more than 100 ravers of not only human ancestry, but other humanoid as well, making it impossible to locate one man in the crowd. It was a good thing Xavier was skilled at tracking. Beneath his reflective glasses, his eyes began to change, taking on the resemblance of suns. With keener vision than any other race, Xavier's eyes had literally marked Jerem with a unique spectrum only visible by his lineage or those with special equipment. Scanning the crowds, it only took a second before he had found his target, and there he was. The short, pudgy, balding man sat at the bar next to a purple, imp-like tulka in what appeared to be heated conversation that would require investigation. Winding through the crowds, Xavier was practically not there. Where he moved, clovers seemed to shift out of his way. His eyes noticed every motion as they shone, every step and slightest sway registering in his mind, allowing him to move through the club unhindered and making him effectively blend in. As he neared Jerem and the agitated tulka, he slowed, making his pace less urgent, giving more concentration to the conversation instead. He listened intently as his eyes ceased to shine, reverting back to their normal golden hue. Taking a seat at the opposite end of the bar, Xavier listened fervently. "I just need a little more time is all," Jerem seemed to be pleading to the tulka. "Time is short, not mine to give. The boss be vexed, she'll eat your ribs." The purple imp spat and rhymed, its long thin ears twitching slightly in anger. "Look," Jerem continued, "I know the boss isn't the most forgiving person, but I just need..." He was cut short. "Need or want, not my problem. You fix this mess or we'll both find coffins," the tulka proposed. "The BMS keeps all contraband in a storage facility south of the city. I just need a month to get a team together." "1 month only." The small creature rubbed its egg-like belly with its 4-fingered claws, pondering. "Or I'll have your head myself. You better not fail, or else." The ugly fiend poked Jerem as it leapt from its bar stool. As it sulked away through the crowd, Jerem leaned onto the bar in relief. Xavier had observed everything. This tulka might be a new lead should Jerem prove a dead end. Although his superiors had to be with the military, it would appear Jerem was grasping at straws himself. Staring at the tulka, Xavier's eyes flared again, marking the imp-like tulka creature just before it could disappear into the sea of bodies. Xavier turned his attention subtly back toward Jerem, noticing the human now drinking alone. "Hey there, cutie, want to dance?" A slender yellow hand pulled at Xavier's shoulder. "I don't dance," Xavier tried to respond, but found himself hopelessly speechless as he turned to face the most beautiful creature he had ever seen in person. Before him, a scantily dressed Linux smiled at his surprise. She was dressed to accent her voluptuous features, garbed in the traditional beige Linux leather, naturally accenting her voluptuous features. Her legs bore knee-high boots with 3-inch heels. Her waist, a bikini-like thong that allowed her long monkey-like tail freedom of motion. She wore a skin-tight top that clung temptingly to her breast, that cut short of her midriff, allowing her tight abdominals to stunningly show. Her face was something out of a Hollow movie, with all her features seemingly too perfect. as her green eyes lolled at Xavier, her four small horns protruding from her temples, differentiating her as a priest class of her people. "You don't what?" she questioned him smugly, her soft voice tickling his ears. Lennox were known for being highly promiscuous in demeanor, and this one was no different. Xavier stared on for a second, finally realizing that it had been 1 second too long. I don't dance," he stammered finally. "Oh, that's really too bad. You're actually kinda cute," she said with what sounded like an afterthought, beginning to walk back into the crowd as she swayed away. Xavier watched her begin to dance. It was like watching the beginning of Aura as her hips twist and popped. It was truly a sight, and for a few seconds he had regretted letting her go. But suddenly the realization that he had taken his eyes off Jerem made him twirl back toward the direction he had last saw him. "Damn it, Xavier," he cursed himself as he searched the crowds. Jerem sat in the alley behind the old hollow and listened to the drowned out music mingling with the voices of the people on the main avenues. It was aggravating. Plus, he was slightly drunk. If only they knew how much money he was going to lose if he couldn't retrieve his stash back from the BMS. They were all so ignorant to what really mattered, Jerem thought, as he allowed his intoxication to soar, sitting upon an old crate. "This had all better pan out," Jerem muttered to himself. "Worry doesn't suit you, Mr. Gray." A soft melody purred from beside him. Jerem leapt in shock from the crate, nearly falling face first. "You, don't do that," he shouted, pointing at his visitor. "Who are you? My contact from the Bureau?" "Not who you were expecting," the speaker giggled, emerging from the shadows. It was the Lennox he had passed earlier when he had entered the club. Her yellow skin seemed nearly translucent in the lime moonlight. No. Let's just get on with this," Jerem misdirected. Bureau personnel were shadowy at best description. The bottom tier of employment seemed normal enough. Simple contractors to lenders and bankers. But above that was a world that was hidden from the public. This Lennox was of those members. "1 minute, man, eh? Fine," the Lennox cooed. "We'll skip the foreplay," she said as she threw a small diskette to Jerem. "That is all the necessary blueprints you will need in order to reach your confiscated ghost." Picking up the diskette from the ground, Jerem retorted, "And what about my escape?" "I have been told," the Lennox responded coldly, all traces of humor and banter gone, "that the Bureau has no more interest in privatizing the development, research, or selling of ghosts on any level. It was and always will be a waste of money." The beautiful Lennox silently yawned, uninterested in the direction of the conversation. But Jerem attempted to interject. "Look," the Lennox interrupted, finishing her yawn and beginning to walk out of the alley toward the main streets. "I was given an assignment to deliver that intel and to tell you verbatim, you have no further backing by the Bureau. What you do now is completely up to you," she said with an emotionless smile and a wave. "But wait," Jerem grasped. "Why is the Bureau helping now then?" At this, the stunning Lennox turned around fully, her black-green hair cascading sexily as she shrugged. "Don't know. I just do what my mission log designates," she said, turning a cold gaze toward Jerem. "I can tell you this, though. If I ever do see you again," she turned her back to walk away, "you'll probably be dead or dying," she giggled, waving in the air. She had only gotten 2 steps when a shadow literally leapt upon her from seemingly nowhere, struggling with her on the ground. Jerem looked on in astonishment for only a second before he bolted back into the club, hoping he hadn't just seen an urban legend. The shadowy figure held the Lennox against the ground for only a few seconds before she found the strength to kick it off, bounding backward to regain her footing. "Well, if this ain't a surprise," she spoke almost to herself. "Rumors had been drifting around that you might have resurfaced," she spoke now, more strongly as she crouched into a fighting stance. As she spoke, the shadow slowly coalesced from the ground into a standing position, its body twisting in upon itself to face her. "Rumors that perhaps you were even the last Iblis himself, but I know what you really are," she spoke softly. As the shadows faced her, it slowly began to dissipate, loosening around its legs first. revealing blue-silver greaves, climbing to sharp blades at the knees. You're the legacy of a legend reborn. Shadow fled from its right arm, revealing the same stylized gauntlets, sharp and foreboding from claw to bladed elbow. You're the rebirth of the original with the blood of the last. The shadow around the figure's face lifted slightly, revealing a jagged silver mask that covered the form's lower face, from chin to bridge of nose, its burning eyes relaxing to reveal dark, golden pupils. You're the truth of rumors, the shadow of death. With these words, the remaining shadow around the armored figure opened like 3 dark wings from its right side, revealing a silver breastplate that stopped just short its abdomen. As the shadow flapped open, 3 dark wisp-like tendrils of shadow flailed from the right side of its back as a powerful wind gusted through the alleyway, causing the Lynx raven hair to blow wildly. You're the darkest seraph. Madam, are you alright? The largely muscular, yet aging elder butler asked his matriarch while leaning wearily upon his cane. His matriarch had been staring speechlessly into the night for almost 10 minutes now. The balcony usually repelled high winds, but for the moment they seemed unrelenting. Her ebony hair whipped against the air, giving her a more regal appearance than even she usually maintained. What is it, Farnsworth? She turned toward her weary Caucasian-descended butler, her hazel eyes piercing his very soul. My lady, your guests await, he bowed apologetically. Should I keep them waiting? The brawny butler questioned calmly. No, I will go to them now, she sighed. She wore an elegant white dress, her usual attire for these menial meetings. The full-length dress accented her still gorgeous body, a body that belied her age. As she stepped back into her sky-high condo, the automatic lights registered, illuminating their master's steps. As the light shone down on her, her caramel skin seemed to glow with radiance. Walking through the dimly lit corridors, the auto lights dimmed and then turned off as she distanced herself from each. The lights only registered for her, even as she passed one of her many servants on her way to her destination. These lights scanned her DNA and only brightened for her bloodline. Her servants and visitors would have to navigate with dim, unwelcoming lighting because she didn't want them to get too comfortable. Madam King, she was greeted as the huge double doors to her conference chamber slid open for her automatically. There before her stood 9 human men, all dressed in business attire, awaiting her presence. They stood around a round, white table with an all-white throne at the opposite end, designating a 10th spot. She silently walked around the circular, all-white room as all eyes followed her. As she reached the throne, she paused in front of it. Please, gentlemen, she remarked strongly as she sat upon the throne, call me Angela. Thanks for watching, and I truly hope you enjoyed. As I said, I'm doing this as a means of records, but I would love your feedback. Let's just try and remember to treat everyone in the comment section how we ourselves would like to be treated. As always, this is J8 signing out, and as always, peace.